again and again, it has issued, for example, there was the vaccine mandate, there was the moratorium on evictions, there was the mask mandate. All of these things got slapped down by federal courts, but it showed that the administration was, it was saying, it was declaring whose side it was on, what it was trying to do, and, perhaps it would get away with some, but even in defeat, it was showing what it would try to do.
Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by Editor-In-Chief Hugo Gurdon. Hugo, there's been this phenomenon where Democrats have been testing the limits of federal power, and now that they're in the White House, in particular the limits of executive branch power. But sometimes other branches push back. What is the logic of continuing to do this when rebuffed by the Supreme Court?
Well, the Democrats have found this a very effective modus operandi. In my column this week, I discuss how the Clinton administration began giving out executive orders on an almost industrial scale, and they used to gloat about the fact that the law of the land could be changed with the signing of a document, and
right,
rather than through Congress. And you'll remember that it was at that time that the vice president then, Al Gore, who had plainly broken the law by soliciting campaign funds from the White House, stood up in front of the press and said, I think it was 7 times, that there was no controlling legal authority. Mm-hmm. What he meant was, although everyone knew that the language of the law was perfectly plain, that it had not been litigated, and therefore it would be the meaning of the law would be regarded as a complete mystery until the thing had been litigated. And that sort of set the tone for the way that the Democrats have since governed. You'll remember that President Obama said it would be inappropriate for him to use an executive order to allow the Dreamers to stay in the country, mm-hmm, and a year later he nevertheless did this without congressional authority. And this was really a harbinger of the way that the Biden White House has behaved. Again and again, it has issued. For example, there was the vaccine mandate. There was the moratorium on evictions, there was the mask mandate. All of these things got slapped down by federal courts, but it showed that the administration was, it was saying, it was declaring whose side it was on, what it was trying to do, and, perhaps it would get away with some, but even in defeat, it was showing what it would try to do.
Mm-hmm. So is the logic of it trying to get credit for at least making the attempt for political or electoral purposes? Or is the hope that they could maybe make some incremental gains in terms of what they're allowed to do?
I think the answer to that, although you asked me an either-or question, is right, yes, it's actually both. Mm-hmm. If you can make some incremental gains, if you can argue in a sufficiently persuasive, casuistical way that the way that everybody understood things before is not really the way that it should be understood, and therefore you can get away with it, well, terrific. But if you failed and you have signaled that you wanted to do X or Y or Z for group A, B, or C. The classic one that has just happened is the Supreme Court slapped down the student loan forgiveness, although it shouldn't really be called forgiveness. What essentially the Biden administration proposed doing was taking the $400 billion burden of debt from the people who actually benefited the money from the loans, and took out the loans and promised to repay them, and imposed that burden on everybody else.
Debt transfer.
Debt transfer.
Mm-hmm.
That was slapped down by the Supreme Court, and notably, Chief Justice Roberts, in writing that opinion, cited the words of Nancy Pelosi, who had said that this was something the president could not do. Again, the president trying through executive order to change the law. Now, the Biden administration has come back and is trying to forgive a much smaller amount of money, but $39 billion. But again, what he's doing is he's pretending that this can be done by a sort of, to clear up a sort of a bureaucratic wrinkle. It was just mm-hmm. to get rid of something that is, it's an adjustment by an official rather than through the government. So yes, he's signaling to the students and who've taken out big loans that he's on their side. Maybe he'll get away with this one, where he didn't get away with the one that he tried for $400 billion.
And it has the added benefit that he can run against the Supreme Court that is at this point mostly made up by Republican appointees, including some appointees by the person he may be running against next year.
That's exactly right. I mean, this is another thing which the parties do, but I mean, very notably, for example, President Obama, when he had the White House and both houses of Congress, could have dealt with immigration. Instead, he dealt with Obamacare. And in fact, there were Democrats up on Capitol Hill who were enraged by the fact that he wouldn't deal with that. Right. It was because it was an issue that played well in elections, and he could run on it rather than actually fixing it. If you fix a problem, the problem goes away and you can't run on it. This is, again, what we see is President Biden wanting to run on this issue and to signal to the voters that he cares about this particular group.
Thank you, Hugo.
Thanks very much, Jim.
You can read Hugo and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.